So how would I write a reflection about this? Um, I think these are the kinds of things that this article makes me think about. It's easy to get sucked into ways to think about power that are not helpful, um, that are ways that sometimes are in direct opposition to what the gospel is about. And I need to be aware of that. I need to be, I mean, just his statement about strategic planning, for example. Part of my job at the School of Theology in Azusa Pacific University is to work on strategic planning. And we have accreditors both for the seminary, Azusa Pacific Seminary, and for the university as a whole. We have an accreditor in the Association of Theological Schools for the seminary, and then we have WASC, the Western Association, that governs accreditation for the university-wide. And these bodies want you to do strategic planning. So even if you didn't want to do it yourself, you feel bound to do it. And I think there's some value in strategic planning. So when the writer writes about somewhat pejoratively, or somewhat tongue-in-cheek, or perhaps even negatively, depends on the way you look at it, about strategic planning and about pastors especially thinking of themselves as titans of business or CEOs. That resonates with me because of the work that I do. I think, are there ways in which I'm getting sucked into a system that is antithetical? Is that too harsh to the gospel? Or to my own vision for my life and what I think it means to be a Christian. So that's one of the things that has me thinking about. And then because of that, I wonder if there are ways in which, because of expediency, because of just needing to get things done, because of deadlines, I brush over the requirements of the gospel that I say that I grab onto. And is that good for me? Is that good for my colleagues, right? Because I hold my Christianity very, very dear, very close to my heart. And am I just bracketing that off in some way? Well, it's not the way I think Christianity works. Is it an add-on, or is it part and parcel of who I am as an individual? One of the other things that I think this particular article does for me is it brings back up some of the things that I wrote about in my dissertation having to do with King Saul. Briefly, and I won't bore you with my dissertation. I don't think it's boring, but most people do, I guess. Briefly, Saul looked like a king. He was taller. It says twice in the Old Testament he was taller than anybody else. Saul looked like a king. He looked like the right guy, but in the end, he wasn't the right guy. David, the runt, in a sense, was the right guy. And I wonder about, are there ways in which we who do this kind of work, are we, setting ourselves up, trying to look a part that we're not called to be, and in that way, are we setting ourselves up to look more like Saul, who, looks can be deceiving. He looked like a king, but in the end, Saul wasn't the king that God had intended. There's much more that we could talk about with that, but those are some reflections that I think about as I read this article, kind of personal things to me. And again, you all have done wonderful work with the reflection piece, and I applaud you. But maybe these are ideas that would be helpful to you. Now, I hope these videos have helped. Kind of a timeout, kind of doing things a little bit differently this week, and maybe this is helpful. If it's not been helpful, then maybe you got kind of a free week. But it's been my intent to help. Thanks very much, and we'll talk to you next week.